Alrighty then. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. We are going to pick up where we left off last night, and I can't actually accomplish what we wanted to last night, which is scaffolding the project. So we are going to be going ahead and knocking that out, as well as you can probably tell from the title of the stream, as well as what I have up here on the screen, we have picked a name. So we'll get to that in just a second. Before I do, though, I do want to just take a quick second to thank the supporters of the channel, starting with our elite partner, Javier Alazaran. That is the highest tier of subscription over on Patreon and YouTube memberships. Followed by our partners, Gerbolis Inc. and Matt Osgard. That is the next tier of subscription there. Followed finally by our supporters listed here, who are a combination of the other tiers of support over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated, means a lot, and will help me get through making this game, because there are going to be costs associated with it. There already have been, and this helps offset that. So thank you guys very much for that. I really appreciate it. And speaking of appreciation, I appreciate each and every one of you viewers, whether you're here joining me live, either on the YouTube side or the Twitch side, or if you're just catching the VOD after the fact. Thank you guys very much for being here. I really appreciate you guys, because without you guys, this project and thus this channel would not exist. So thank you all for being here. Cool. All right, so let me catch up on chat. Spiro was super excited to be first over there on the Twitch side, so congrats on that. Apotham just missed it looks like. Yeah, that happens sometimes. Sometimes happens to the best of us, for sure. Singy and Bunny Twilight over on the YouTube side. Hello, welcome. So, yeah, I did a lot of thinking about this name here, and I came up with Shadows of Illumina, right? Which is kind of a little bit of a play on words to the name of the world itself, right? And all of the lore that's going to be surrounding light and light-based energies that are going to be used within the world via our magic and whatnot, right? And so, you know, the idea here is that, you know, it looks to be a bright and prosperous world for the most part, but there are lots of hidden shadows is kind of the idea behind this, right? So we're going to be exploring the world of Illumina and discovering those shadows and what secrets they hold along the way. And so Shadows of Illumina, I think, is a fitting title for the game. So that is what we are going to go with. As far as the name, I don't see that changing going forward. All right. I guess that's pretty much out of the way. What we're going to do tonight, I don't have any further world map updates for today, so I think what we're going to do tonight is actually we're going to go ahead and stand up / scaffold the project. And so last time I kind of did that off camera. This time we're going to do it on camera. But I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm basically going to take a copy of Overdrive 2069, and we're basically going to use a copy of that to scaffold this game, right? So the easiest way to do that is probably going to be through here. I suppose I could open up a file explorer. We could do it that way too. If I just go here to, and with a file explorer, and what we're going to need is we're going to need the Overdrive 2069 KApp and Overdrive 2069 KLib, and we're just going to make copies of those things. So I think what I'm going to do, for the sake of brevity, so that we don't have super long names, right? Because typing Overdrive 2069 was already kind of annoying, right? Is I'm just going to call this SOI for Shadows of Illumina, right? So we're going to go continue here. That's the KApp, and then the KLib is also going to be SOI, right? Not to be confused with the SOL, because we are not SOL. All right. So I believe the rest of it we can actually handle in Vim. So we'll go ahead and do that. And so we have here our new things stood up here. So I guess we'll go through and just kind of stand those things up one by one. So I guess it makes sense to start off at the, well, let's start in let's start in the app. I guess that makes sense, right? We'll take a look at our application config. So we're obviously going to change the app name. Right? So we'll have that. Obviously, we'll need the manifest file path. So it's going to be SOI kapp asset manifest. So we'll need to change that as well. And then we'll also want to change the window title as well. So that's going to be Shadows of Illumina, right? All right. I think, though, I believe all of the rest of the config in here is going to wind up being mostly the same. We're going to be able to keep a lot of this stuff. And this is already a much pared down version of what the test bed had anyway. So this is kind of a good starting area for us to kind of go with, right? So we'll do that. I think that's it for app config for right now. We'll also check out the asset manifest. So we need to modify this a little bit, right? So right now it's just called this. I'm going to call it SOI. SOI is going to be the package name, right? And I guess we could keep all of the sort of test assets we have in there for now. We didn't really add anything too crazy, so I'm okay with keeping what's in there for now. Compile flags. We're going to generate this, but just for the sake of code completion, we are going to go ahead and just update that manually for right now. And then, of course, source entry. We are going to have a couple things in here to update as well. So this is the entry point to the application. There's not a whole lot in here, right? This is relatively light, right? We basically just need to change any reference to, overdrive, right? So what we're going to do here is just do SOI klib loaded. That's for the hot reloading. And then we can also do the same thing here and here. And one more here at the bottom. Two more at the bottom, rather. And another one here. So this is the application path to get. So it's really just, kind of a find and replace. Let's do fail to watch the Shadows of Illumina library, right? We can actually spell it out there. Okay, let's see. Fix me safe version of string formats. So I guess, let's see, why are we using platform watch file? Does this take a platform C? Register watch. I just want to see if it takes a copy of the string. I'm pretty sure it does. Let's see. Yes, we do take a copy of it. Okay, so we can actually eliminate this fix me real quick. Let's just fix this. Let's do a character array. And we'll call this path equals. And we're going to do string format and remove the first parameter, right? Right, so we can get rid of that, so we can get rid of that, and now we're not using the unsafe version of that anymore. And then I guess what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do a string free on that here. And I guess we'll do it one more time here, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so that's the entry. Nothing really crazy going on there. In terms of assets, I don't believe there's too much in here that actually has to change. I think we can kind of stick with what we have. The only real difference is going to be, instead of calling this a track, let's rename this to kind of follow the nomenclature of the game we're working on. So we're going to call this, let's see. Should we do like zone 0, zone 1, zone 2, or should we have actual named zones? because I feel like the named zones can actually change. So maybe we should just do, let's do zone 0, 0, right? Whoops. Let's do zone 0, 0. Let's see. I don't think anything in here is going to have to change other than that. I think actually we should probably take a look at the scene itself. Yeah, so we're just going to say zone 0 is going to be the name. And then we're just going to say the very first zone in SOI, right? And we may wind up using that description later on. We may not. We'll see. What I think I might do is, yeah, we'll have to do SOI here for the package name in a few different places. I could just do a find and replace across the whole file, but I kind of want to keep an eye on what we're doing, right? Okay. So this is like before we created, you know, a bunch of logic around the track and stuff like that. So I think we're still okay. I think we're going to have a copy of that track logic in the actual the library, but we'll go ahead and eliminate that as well. This game already seems illuminating. Gee, I appreciate the pun. All right. So that's it for that, I believe. I think that's everything we need to do for the K app. So now we can go to the klib and straighten that out as well. So we'll do compile flags first. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome. So this is going to be SOI klib. In there, again, that's going to generate automatically, but we're not quite there yet. Let's take a look at source, right? This is going to be where most of our changes are. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove track. We don't need that for this game, so we're going to remove that. And then we're going to have a couple of different files here. Let's actually remove the version H. Let's get rid of that. We'll auto-generate that, and then we will rename this. Whoops. So instead of this, it's going to be called just SOI main. And same thing here. And same for types, actually. So the idea is most of our game code is going to be based out of main, or at least that's what's going to initialize everything, and then types is going to be where we can define our types so that we don't have to include main.h in everything. So let's have a look at our types in here. We don't need track H, right? So we can go ahead and get rid of that. A lot of this stuff, though, I think I am going to wind up keeping. So we do have this thing called track scene. We'll rename that in a bit. I think I'm going to keep a lot of this stuff. However, the gameplay stuff down here, like this test vehicle X form and all that stuff, that's going to go away. Okay, so we have game data. I guess we'll just call this actually as well. We're just going to say game frame data, right? So we'll do the same thing here. Because these types are only going to be available in here anyways. So I think that makes sense. Go to SOI main. I don't think there's anything in this file that has to be changed. Nope. Okay, it's all going to be in the C file, which is fine. So this is going to be SOI main, right? This is going to be, what is that? Probably 13 letters, yeah. All right, so we can change that. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay. This doesn't exist yet because we have not created it yet. We're going to auto-generate that in our build process, so that is actually fine. All right. So booting. This is mostly going to be just kind of renaming things, right? So I think what we can do is we could probably, in this file, I'm thinking we can probably get away with a find and replace. So we'll say overdrive 2069, and then we're going to also follow that here, so we only replace types, right? And we're just going to do SOI underscore. G. And I know that's going to technically make frame data probably wrong, but we can handle that separately. I wonder if that's actually all of the errors that we have, though. No. Okay. So K version, we know we're not going to have that. Let's actually do this one more time. So we want SOI frame data. And we just want to use game frame data. Okay, so that eliminated some of the problems. Excuse me. All right, so this is a lot of our movement code. To be completely honest, I think we can actually nuke all of this. I think if we need to reference any of it, we just pull it out of the other game. This is all... This is basically once we actually have a scene loaded, right? So we want to leave this in here, but all this vehicle stuff, we can get rid of that, right? I'm also going to get rid of this dead code here because this is just like a sample of how to do stuff, but it's kind of outdated, so we're just not going to do that. So we'll get rid of some stuff there. And then further down in our updates, we are... Okay. So this is something we're going to have to obviously put in. So we had something in the world where previously we had the sound following the actual vehicle instead of the camera, right? And so that's obviously going to be the player, but we don't have that yet. So let's just comment this out because I don't want to get rid of it. We're going to need it. We just need to go ahead and you know, and get a player in the world first before we can actually do any of this stuff. All right, so I guess we'll say to do re-enable once player is in world. All right, so let's just do that, and then here in prepare frame we had some geometry hacks, right? Just to get the track to render, so we actually don't need this stuff anymore. So we can actually remove that. And also all the hacks to create the track, right? Because we don't need like specialized things to do that anymore. Let's see. These two things I do want to keep. Get position or get xform of player once added. Right, so I'm going to keep these for reference because we're going to need those. We are going to want to handle that. And then here is the load track. We can get rid of that. And that looks like That looks like all the errors that we can actually fix until we get the build running. All right. So I believe that is all we have to do in code to actually get this thing up and running. We do want, I am going to go ahead and change the clear color to something else yet again, just so that we know we're running the right thing, right? So for the test bed, we had a dark blue. For overdrive, we had sort of a, like a purplish color. This time, let's actually use like a teal color, I think. So we're just going to mix like a dark teal color. So we have a little bit of green and a little bit of blue here. So we'll set that. And then the only other thing we'll need to do is modify the build scripts to include these libraries. And we'll probably just go ahead and comment out the ones for overdrive. And so to do that, we'll need to go to, we're not going to worry about the hot reloading stuff just yet. We're going to go to build all. We're going to need to modify the shell script and the batch file. So here are the overdrive things, right? So we have one for the lib and one for the game. So let's take a copy of this and we'll put it there. We will, I guess I'm going to have to like manually type this out. I don't remember if I have to have spaces after these or not. The highlighting's telling me no, but we'll see. So we've got that. This needs to be changed to SOI. Let's see, what else do we have here? I think all of the rest of this is kind of standard stuff. I don't think we really have to mess with this at all. No. Okay, so that's just the lib. So that should be it there. And then same thing goes here for the game, we'll say executable. Right, so let's take this and move it down here. And again, we will comment all that stuff out for overdrive because that's shelled for now. So we'll just change, again, the name references. And I don't remember if this one actually had any. No, it doesn't. Okay, perfect. All right. That might actually be it. So let's do a clear. And actually, I think I might actually have to manually clear a couple things in the bin folder for overdrive. Let's get rid of everything in here, actually. And also, I'm going to go in here to the object folder, and we're going to get rid of everything in here as well. Just to have a clean slate to start on, right? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and build, debug. See if I missed anything. Probably did. Yep, we missed an include, SOI main. I thought we got all of them. Nope, there it is right there. Okay. Why is this bleating? Okay. Wow, this is like a huge fallout of other weird things. Okay, this is the true error here. Sound position is uninitialized if... Okay, so what we're going to do... I didn't think about that when I disabled that. So if we go back to this section where we sort of disabled this code, we're going to make it also follow the camera. So we're going to say hack just follow the editor camera for now. Okay. We built anyways, so let's see if this runs. So we're going to go here to our debugger, and we're going to change to... Oh, we actually have a little bit of config to do here. And since this is actually configuration specific to VS, we're going to go ahead and configure it here. So all we need to do is we need to go into tasks, I think it was. Yes. No, not tasks, launch. And we just need to add a new configuration here, right? And I'm just going to copy this one for Overdrive 2069. We're going to leave that one there, but we're just going to rename this to we're going to do that. And then this is going to be SOI KApp. And I think there's one more. Now we can come over here and switch this to Shadows of Illumina, right? Which is right at the top, because that's what we want the default to be. We'll use testbed whenever we add a new feature or something to test things, obviously. But this is what we want to run. So let's go ahead and run it and see what we get. Okay, so we have our old school looking green here, which kind of reminds me of the Windows 95 desktop background color, the default. But anyway, looks like our console works. I guess let me try loading up a test scene, right? Looks like we do have... Oh, you know what? We don't have the track 00. Okay, so we've got a couple things to do. I think we're still referencing some old assets there. But we can go ahead and solve that. So it did give us the debug grid, but of course we can't move the camera around or anything because we nuked all the controls, right? So we should probably add some of that stuff back, I guess. I was a little bit overzealous in what we nuked. Mahmood, good to see you. Welcome over to the Twitch side. I know you're usually over on YouTube. So what does a live stream title mean? Let me actually look at it because I don't remember exactly what I typed. So basically it means we're doing game dev using the custom engine, right? And the name of the game that we're developing is Shadows of Illumina, right? We've named the game that we're working on. And this is episode 8. So we are setting up the project for that game to work with Kohi, obviously, and that's what we just saw running for the first time, actually. So Overdrive 2069 is the old game that we are kind of scaffolding that I decided to shelve. So yes, there are 2 games, but one of them is shelved, right? So I'm leaving it there just in case we go back to it, but the game we're working on right now is Shadows of Illumina. Which game engine? It is the Kohi game engine. It's the game engine that was written completely from scratch using C and Vulkan. Yep. Just for additional context, I'll go ahead and drop a link there. And if you click on that, it'll bring you to this website here. That's kind of gives you a whole bunch of information about the engine itself. YouTube and Twitch links, links to the GitHub where the engine itself is that we're using to actually build this game. We just started actually building this game. We've kind of been in design mode for a bit, and we're going to be kind of going back and forth between design, coding the game, and eventually making assets, as well as actual engine updates. So it's going to be kind of all about it. Yeah. So let me go. I don't need these one. I don't need this window. Actually, I've got another one. So just to recap quickly as well, for anybody that new that just walked in, we have, let me just find the, so this is sort of the structure that we've kind of built out for Shadows of Illumina. So Illumina is actually the name of the world, right? We've already kind of scaffolded out a world map for this as well. And so this is what Illumina looks like right now. It is still very much under construction, right? This is what the world map is going to look like, right? I've still got some very unfinished zones in here. You can see sort of wide open, empty areas. So we're going to be fixing a lot of that stuff. But this is kind of what we have so far. And we have a bunch of lore in here that we've sort of developed on stream and talked about. We've talked about gameplay ideas, but the overarching concept here is it's a 3D isometric action RPG, right? And so that's what we're building. And so it's going to have an isometric perspective, but it's going to be perspective isometric, not the old school sort of 2D orthographic style of of graphics, right? So it's going to be fairly open world, although split up into zones. It's going to encourage exploration. It's not going to be too linear. We'll have multiple endings based on actions and choices you take and make throughout the game. And so I'm not going to go through this entire document now. We've already done that, and we likely will do again. But I'll just quickly scroll through all of the ideas and world building we've done so far, right? We've talked a lot about what mechanics we want, and so forth. Even combat mechanics, progression, which is what we talked about on last stream, actually. Right down to some of the item types, which we still have some more to develop on that. So we may circle back to that after we kind of stand things up. We've got some control schemes in here, engine features that we need. Oh, and I forgot to actually show you guys this yesterday. So the art style that I was initially thinking of was sort of a like a hand-drawn cartoon outline, semi-realistic, but also painterly Borderlands kind of style in terms of graphics. And I still am kind of leaning towards that direction, but I went around the internet and kind of looked at a bunch of different examples of games that are kind of in this same genre. And I put a whole bunch of screenshots in here for inspiration. And so I'm just going to kind of not really explain them, but kind of scroll through really quickly just to give you guys kind of an idea of some of the things, some of the concepts I'm thinking about for this, right? And it may wind up being a combination of several different aspects here, right? So it's all just different stuff like this, right? And obviously we're going to generate our own artwork for this. But we have, lots of different styles that we want to explore. And eventually we'll land on something, right? We might land on a style more like this, maybe, or some mix of all the styles we've seen so far. There's stuff like this, right? Just for examples of what buildings might look like. And then this is like what the programmer art version of that's going to look like, right? So this is probably what we're going to want, start off building before we actually have any assets to import. But I don't want to stay like this too long either. All right. Thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate that. Let me catch up here. LaFoley, good to see you. Welcome. Reopening the engine today. Yeah. So we're scaffolding the project today. So this is going to be basically just kind of getting the bones of it set up so that we can actually start working on it. I do actually need to set this up so that it is in a separate repository from Kohi. I don't want the game to necessarily be in the same repository for the whole life cycle of development. I'm probably going to do like Git submodules or something. And actually what I'm thinking about is probably something along the lines of, and maybe we should set this up tonight, maybe as an example of that. But kind of what I'm thinking about is maybe we set up maybe we have a setup where we have the game has the engine as a submodule, right? And I don't quite know how that's going to work in terms of debugging either. That's going to be an interesting bit to figure out. I think once we figure it out, it'll work cross-platform just fine. But I've got to figure out that. So we may actually work on that tonight as well. Be a good if an empty template klib and kapp are included in the source code. Yeah, and that's kind of probably what Overdrive 2069 is going to turn into, if I'm honest. I'm probably going to turn this into a template. And then we can just generate new games based off that template. We'll just continuously update it. But I'm hesitating to do that because I have a feeling that's going to change as we add stuff to the engine. And until we really go through a complete release cycle, I don't necessarily want to create templates just yet. Let's see. Are you supposed to static link the engine? Right now, yes. Is it easier to link Kohi and use includes directly? Instead of get sub module. Well, the reason I'm thinking about a sub module is because that way Kohi's code base doesn't actually have to have any knowledge of the game. Should be okay for debugging then if the source is just in local. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, I'm thinking of having like I guess if we, let's go up here. Right, I'm thinking that we have, so I'm thinking that we have the game, right? The game folder here. And then under the game, we have, what I guess it's going to be, let me see if I can kind of make a little tree view here, right? So underneath the game, we'd have its source folder, right? And then we'd also have, I guess I'd probably call it submodules, right? And under submodules, I would probably have, under here, I'd probably have Kohi as like the first one, right? The only problem with this is I think it would probably be better if we had, instead of Kohi by itself, if all these things were different submodules. But I don't really want to fragment the code base like that yet, right? Like ideally the end solution would be something that looks like this, right? Where we have, Kohi core, Kohi dot runtime, and then we have, like Kohi dot plugin dot whatever, right? And so all of the submodules would all of these would essentially be submodules, right? And that's really the reason I haven't done this yet, is because all of this stuff, kind of like all the plugins and everything, is kind of under the same repo. And I think at some point I'm going to split that, but I'm really hesitating to do that until we've actually, while there's so many moving parts, until we actually nail things down a little bit further. I don't really want to do that, but this is kind of the structure I have in mind. So the game will have all of its source in here, right? Obviously, also it would have its assets there as well, right? And then under submodules would be where you find the engine and stuff. Let's see. Is it easier to link to Kohi and use the includes directly instead of a get submodule? It's easier for now, yeah, but eventually that's going to bite us, right? So eventually we're going to need a structure, I think, like this, right? Where sort of the game owns the engine. Because the other advantage to doing this is we can actually set each one of these to a specific branch and version, right? So we can say that, this game is locked to 0.9 of Kohi core by using submodules like that, right? Which is going to be super important down the road when we have multiple games that target different versions of Kohi and we need to like fix something or retro a fix or something like that. This is generally the way you'd handle that. because you can actually set a tag or a branch that you use here to build against the game, right? So ultimately, that's going to be what we're going to use. Let's see. I hope that makes sense. What is the top level interface? Include Kohi H, and then so we don't have like a Kohi.h. I am on the fence as to whether or not I want to do that. Maybe, but for now, we only pull in the parts of the library that we need, right? And so it would wind up looking something very much like this, right? Which is a lot of includes, but I feel like it's kind of important to only pull in what you need. So the engine imports the project source. Not quite. It's more that the game pulls in the engine, if that makes sense. There is a little bit of inversion of control, though, because technically the main function exists in Kohi core, but yeah. But yeah, essentially the game would decide what it pulls in here. Yeah. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Yeah, so main is not actually in the executable. Main is actually in Kohi's library. Yeah. And that's by design, so that, the application doesn't have to worry about that, right? So you need to pass in some callback pointers. Yes, and that is all done. That setup is all done pretty much already for you. And what eventually is going to be the template, right? So if we take a look at the K app, and we go to, let me collapse this. If we look at entry.c, we have load game lib right here, right? So that essentially is what sets up a whole bunch of application function pointers. And tells the engine about, how to invoke all these callbacks, right? So all you have to do is supply the callbacks, and I'm probably going to automate this a little bit more, right? Where all of these calls, because they look for specific names of functions, right? So to opt into these things, all you're basically going to do is somewhere in your game code you have to have a function called this, right? And it's just going to reach out and grab that, and it needs to be obviously the right format and all that stuff. No problem, just sitting, listening, and learning. Awesome. Well, welcome. Let's see. Does not seem to exist. Wait. By the way, it seems it does not exist in the roadmap to implement on-game start check for update, download, hot reload. Seems it's important for providing new content to gamers. Oh, you're talking like server updates and stuff like that? Yeah, we wouldn't do it that way. This is going to be launched on Steam, so in order to get new updates, you just download them from Steam. There'd be a game update on Steam that you just download. I'm not setting up a server and whole update system and all that stuff. And then hosting all that? No, thank you. Do not have time for that. Let's see. Something ironic I found on creating games in C, C++ is it's easier to create your own window handling API using Windows Linux specifications than rather than using a third-party library and linking it with CMake. I 100% agree with you, and that's what we've done here. That's my experience too. Totally agree. Game is single player, I assume. Yes, it is. Yep. Yeah, we're not doing networking or anything. I don't think there's going to be any network code in this game whatsoever. It doesn't really need it, right? Okay, so let's see. One thing that I did do that I still need to actually pull back out of Overdrive's code is I actually took out some of this logic in terms of being able to move the camera around and whatnot, right? So, oh wait a minute. Did we or did we not? Actually, I might have left that in there by default. Let me see something. I think I just actually forgot to change modes. So we know the scene doesn't work. I'll fix that in a second, but I think if I switch to editor camera, I can move it. Yeah, okay, so that does work. We just don't have controls to actually move the camera, you know, follow player object, just because we don't have that yet. Okay, so that's fine. I'm not going to pull this in yet. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. What we're going to do instead, when we do the load scene, we've got some obviously hard-coded stuff in here. It's going to be that way for a bit until we actually get some of our game systems in place for doing things like porting between zones and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and say loading zone, right? And I'm just going to leave it at that for now. And what we're going to want is track. It's not going to be track anymore. We are going to load a zone. Now, this is an example of something we probably ought to wrap in like some sort of zone handling type of system or zone system, right? As far as all of the creation of you know, the resource request, the handling callbacks of it, all that stuff. And also the loading of it, right? That's eventually something we probably ought to punt off onto a system of its own. But for now, let's just change this to SOI, and what I think I called this zone 00. And let's see, scene resource. So test scene. Let's actually call this zone 00 again. And then we'll do zone scene resource. Let me check for other references to overdrive in here. Because we actually need to rename some of this stuff, right? So let me actually do let's rename all of this to just SOI. And we don't have any more of those in here. Okay, perfect. So let's get rid of this one. Let's see if our test zone actually loads up. So we'll go ahead and run. Okay. No entry called zone 00 exists. Oh, I know why. Because we didn't actually change the name of the zone in our application manifest, or asset manifest. So we want this one. So we have this that needs to be called zone 00, and then this also needs to be called zone 00. Let's try that again. There we go. All right. So if we switch to this, we still have sort of our test vehicle in there, right? So we're going to have to, we'll switch that to like player movement, right? And we'll just have him move around on the Y plane for now. Just make sure our sound is working. I'm hearing it through my speakers here, but I'm thinking you guys probably can't hear that. So I'm not going to worry about that for now. I will fix that for a future stream. It also looks like at least part of this loaded. Looks like we might have some asset issues in terms of the leaves on there. So I'll have to check that. But it looks pretty good. The only other thing I can think of, I wonder if we actually have to, we might actually have to re-import those meshes. Let's test that really quickly. So let's go into here. Into the app rather. Assets, and let's do re-imports on all of these, right? So we're just gonna delete the non-source entries. And then let's see, that's images. Materials, we'll leave those. Those should be fine. We do have some package name issues in here though, so that's needs to be changed to SOI. That's why that wasn't loading, and I think, yeah, it's going to be, these materials are all referencing the wrong package name, because that does not exist anymore, so that's why those textures aren't loading. Models. Okay, so I don't think we need to worry about re-importing the models themselves. I think actually those should be fine. Should be good, actually. That should be all we have to do. So let's launch that and load. And there we go. Okay, so we've got our 512 texture loading here, and we have our textures loading here. So at least, you know, all of our sort of default textures and whatnot, and materials and meshes, all of our test stuff seems to be working. Cool. All right. Let's see. Let me check on chat here. Magetz, good to see you. How's it going? That's a Dingus game title. Shadows of Light. Yes, exactly. Yep. It's, you know, Dingus-oriented programming, you know, but basically, Shadows of Illumina. So Illumina is actually the name of the world that this game is based in, right? So the game is actually called Shadows of Illumina. This is the world map for the game, right? So this is what we're going to be building out. Yeah. So that's, you know, Illumina is yes, it's deeply rooted in light, and so is a lot of the lore, right? So there's going to be lots of juxtaposition between light and dark in this game, and that's also going to affect anima, which is sort of the magic of the world, and we'll get into all of that at some point. Heroes of Might and Magic clone? No, definitely not. It's not a clone of anything, I don't think. Gotta have a Dingosaur as an Easter egg enemy. You know, I don't hate the idea. But because I'm a dingus, I'm going to completely forget that that's even a thing. So I've got something in here for like name ideas. For like places, groups of people. Let's do enemies, mobs, right? And we'll put one in there. Dingosaur. Dingus-oriented programming is the best way to program. I agree. That's why I do it so much. Wish someone would do that with normal networking. Yeah, I mean, networking just adds so much complexity, and you've got to host that somewhere too, right? And I find that networking also adds an expiration date to the game. I don't want to do that. Maybe you can hunt the Dingosaur to get a set of Dingus equips that suck for challenge runs, right? That's very funny. Opened my game project after a few months and did a build. For some reason, the average FPS dropped from 3.5K to 175, and I spent 2 hours trying to debug what happened. You thought the driver or Vulkan was messing with you. Turns out it was G-Sync. Oh, that would do it. Yep. I like Shadows of Illumina has a nice ring to it. I think so too. I'm really kind of a fan of the title. Dingus equips. Dungus would be a... Wait. Did I... Oh, I didn't type... Yeah. Dungus would be a Dingosaur dung. Yeah, maybe there's a quest where you have to pick up Dungus. Or maybe there will be a pleb named Dungus somewhere. All right. Is this going to be some sort of single player vanilla WoW with Dark Souls twist? Not quite. So to give you an idea, I went around and took like screenshots of a bunch of different games for inspiration, right? And so it's going to have a perspective kind of like this, right? Where you're kind of zoomed out. You've got an isometric view of the world, and this is how you're going to play. So it's, I guess you could say it's probably closer to Diablo, with like an Elden Ring twist. Is it third person? Yes. SOI would be an action RPG. Yes. Yep. In fact, that's literally what we defined it as, right? So it's a 3D isometric action RPG. Good luck for me translating Dingosaur. Yeah, Tammin, that's going to be an interesting set of translations when we get to that point. Yeah, so it is going to be a single player game. It'll be a bit akin to the old Baldur's Gate games, things like that. So to move so that is going to be a big difference. To move the character is going to be with keys and an analog stick and the mouse, but not with mouse clicks, right? So the control scheme that we've defined is that essentially your character is going to be controlled by WASD in the world, and then you're going to aim with the mouse, right? So when you're casting fireballs or something like that, that's kind of how you're going to do that. Or you can bust out one of these, and you can use the dual analog sticks to accomplish the same thing. Let's see. You ready with making the Ukrainian translation? That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm hoping to get to. We'll see. Helps me envision it better. Yeah. I like that. I feel like that's a lot more active than just clicking all the time. I don't like having to click around to like move. And also that gets me around having to do crazy amounts of pathfinding all over the place. It's going to be as difficult as the old Baldur's Gate. I emulated it on my Steam Deck recently and it kicked my ass. So I'm actually looking to make this more of a skills-based game than anything, right? So like, if you wanted to do a naked run with just a rusty dagger, you'll be able to actually go through the entire game and play it that way. You'll just obviously have to be super skilled to not get hit and things like that. That's kind of the idea. Obviously, you would have, you'd have the opportunity to sort of upskill, increase your attributes, and get better gear, and that's going to be the progression. There's not going to be an EXP or level system. So yeah. Parry. Parry is something I hadn't really considered. Right now we're only considering melee block. Obviously you'll have a shield you'll be able to absorb with armor and stuff like that. But Ringus of Dingus fixes all stats to 1. Be a legendary item. The concept art, what would you call that? Grunge aesthetic. Yeah, so, I mean, it's not even really concept art, right? So these are just screenshots out of other games that already exist, that I've just found around, right? And they're all different styles. So we're going to experiment with a few of these different styles. Some of them, it's just UI elements I want to pick out. Some of it is kind of the visual style I want to pick out. And I kind of want a combination of a few of them. I really like the way this looks. I really like the way that this looks, and this as well, right? But I also kind of like the sort of cartoony look that Borderlands has, right? So we're going to try a bunch of different styles and see what works. 10 frames parry window like in Street Fighter 3, or 6 like in Devil May Cry. So I don't know that we're going to get that crazy with it. We're going to have to see, right? Because one thing that I've not been a huge fan of is, for example, in Elden Ring, when you are fighting a giant, right? You're fighting a giant. He does like a ground stomp. It's got a huge radius on it, but because you dodge rolled, right, you're immune to it for a certain number of frames, even though the ground around you is all exploding. That to me is dumb, right? I think invincibility frames are just not the way to do it. I'm not a huge fan of it. I just it looks wrong. It just doesn't feel right to me. So we're not going to have that, and it's probably going to wind up being the same thing with anything else we do. If you're in the middle of a ground stomp, you're going to get stomped. Yeah, no iframes, exactly. Yep. Let's see. I think the dwarves need to have a beard similar to yours, and their battle cry could be dingus. Well, remember though, the dwarves are like annoying, murderous little shits, as we're calling them, right? So like, or at least one of the types of dwarves, right? We don't necessarily we don't want to give them the title or knowledge of the dingus, right? Because they are not worthy of the dingus. And so we have, let's see, we've got it in here. So the Bloodbane dwarves are the ones that are super murderous, right? So we don't want to give those guys. Maybe the Hillstone dwarves that are actually decent. Maybe those could be, equipped with the knowledge of the dingus. Let's see. PoE 2 has that, can only dodge projectiles and melee attacks. Yep, exactly. With dodge, AoEs will always hit, 100%. And we may wind up having... I haven't really decided if I want to do like an on-the-ground glyph that's going to show up as to like where the AoE is going to hit. I don't know how I feel about that. We'll see. I think having some iframe stuff is okay, but making it super limited, very few uses or something, maybe. I don't know. I feel like it's too OP. You can duck under projectiles. Yeah, I think that should be a thing. You can't just roll. You can do it 1 or 2 times per adventure, bonfire, rests, and Dark Souls. Yeah. Did I finish the Wipeout clone? No, I shelved it. Vehicular combat games are not popular right now. And I did a lot of research, and I'm like, this isn't really the game I want to make anyways. And I'm like, why am I going to spend all this effort for a game that's probably not going to sell? So, yeah. Personally not a fan of that. I would like in-world hints or audio hints to attacks. Bid circles are a very immersion breaking, and I agree. Yeah. And actually, a very egregious example of this. Let me find it. So Final Fantasy XIV does this a lot. So they've got, let me see if I can find a really good example. Here, I'll just pull this down. So Final Fantasy XIV does a lot of stuff like this, right? Or like this. They also have effects that are like this that I don't think are so bad. But I think these circles like this are very immersion breaking, right? Now, you could not play this game, especially in like the crazy raids and stuff, without having that. You wouldn't be able to do it, and so I want to avoid that, right? You could have like some of these are okay, right? But some of them still look kind of weird. It just looks like a projected texture, right? So that's kind of the thing I want to avoid. But they also kind of go bananas with it in raids sometimes. Like, you'll have a bunch of them overlaid on top of one another and a whole bunch of effects going off. They're trying to point you to do different things, and they just think it's too much. Which is why I don't raid in that game anymore. So, yeah, it's kind of a balancing of that, too. It would be an emergency thing to prevent a death when you've exhausted all other options or screwed up royally. You get one super save iframe nonsense, and maybe you have to earn it. So rather than an iframe, why not just an invincibility spell that you can only cast once an hour or something, right? And it gives you like, I don't know, 5 or 10 seconds of invisibility, like lay on hands for a paladin and WoW, you know? Or not, no, it wasn't lay on hands, was it? Lay on hands is the heal. Was it divine intervention? I can't remember the dang spell title now. It's been so long since I played, but yeah, they have a bubble, basically. That's what I always called it, you know. Bubble hearthing was a thing where you could just, you know, do that and then hearth. It's super annoying back in the day, but yeah. Since we're talking ARPGs, Path of Exile does a really good job with boss move visualization. Yeah, and that's one example I need to look at a lot closer. A lot of audio cues and visual ones telling you what's coming. Yes. So we do want to have lots of stuff like that. But I do want it to be both audio and visual, because something I haven't really talked about in this project so far is I do actually want this game to be I guess, what's the term? I do want this game to have certain accessibility features, right? So for the hearing impaired, I don't want you to have to rely on only audio cues. Like, it's an extra thing if you're able to use it, but like, I don't want you to be screwed if you can't hear what's going on, you know? That kind of thing. Color blindness modes, those kind of things. And also probably some control schemes to make it a little bit easier for people that don't have quick dexterity with a controller, right? So that's something I definitely want to think about as well. 5 seconds is a lot, though. I was thinking 0.5. Yeah, exactly. We'd have to balance it. Atlas is the best game for me so far. Talking about ARPGs, the game is so good. Okay, I'll have to take a look at that. I want games to have TTS feature now. That's the very good ones around. Yeah, AI ones that have to be connected to the internet, right? I don't want to read walls of text. I'd rather listen to it. Yeah, so that's... I'm not going to have voice acting in this game. I can't afford it, right? It's just a fact, right? So dialogue is going to be text. There's not much I can do about it. Prefer the Zelda-style grunts? Yeah. So that was something I think early WoW also did, right? Where when you interact with an NPC, they have like short reused dialogue, you know, like, what do you need? Or we have only the finest wares, or something like that. Atlas works on DirectX 10. On purpose? Okay. Grunts and mouth sounds. Yeah, I mean, I get that. Let's see. 3-leg chair over there on YouTube. Hello. It would be good if seafloor reflection is added. Yeah, so, seafloor reflection. Do you mean like when you're underwater looking up? That's going to be something we have to add at a later point. Are we going to see some isometric terrain today? No. Reason being is because we actually have to get blended materials back into the game before we can actually re-enable our terrain. So, yeah. That's on the to-do list, but we're just not there yet. Speaking of, we should probably think about... you know, our zone and how we kind of want to hook up, you know, hook some of this stuff up. So we've got, right now we kind of like hacked in a test vehicle, and that's fine. Maybe we load the player this way too. So this test vehicle would wind up being, you know, let's just say player. And so we give them a default transform. We'll do player mesh, right, which for right now is just a cube, right? So we're just going to use a static mesh for that until we get animations in. Let's, however, change the... let's change this up a little bit. Let's put this put this exactly on the y-plane. We'll worry about collision and all that stuff another time. No rotation to begin with. And then in terms of scale, we're going to have, so 1 unit in the game is 1 meter, right? So you figure we're going to say that the average person height is, I guess I could just say 2 meters, right? I realize that's not necessarily the case in the real world, right? But I guess we could say 2 meters. Watching this during class. I appreciate that, but, make sure that you don't miss out in your class. But I do appreciate that. Water caustics? Oh, yeah, that's a whole other thing. We're probably going to do that with projected textures. Bunny Twilight over on the YouTube side. Thank you so much for the supporter role. Thank you very much. I appreciate that support. Thank you. Means a lot. Jessica Twilight over on the Twitch side. Thank you for the tier 1 sub. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's see. Cost effects of water. Yeah, eventually, if we have an underwater level, I'll do that, but I'm probably not going to bother for this game. Game stylized to a PS2 era. Don't really understand why DirectX 10. It's like a yellow light on traffic lights. Nobody gave a crap about it. Yeah, exactly. Only other game I know of on DirectX 10 is Devil May Cry 4. Nobody uses it. Yeah, exactly. Why not just switch to 11? 2 meter high character, I feel represented. Nice. Yeah, I think I'm going to say 2 meters, right? So let's just go. Let's go 2 meters tall, and I'm just going to say, in terms of width, let's just say, what would it be, like, I guess a third? Something like that. Right, so we'll just do, we'll do a third. For now. Doesn't really matter, right? It's just kind of gets the feel for it anyways. So that'll be our player mesh. And this is what we will hook up in our gameplay code and use that to sort of move around. And I'm actually thinking, like, I'm not even 100% sure we're going to need, like, the physics system that we started kind of scaffolding for this. I'm not 100% sure we're even going to need that. I think I've got a couple of ideas in mind of how we could just have Y-based movement, and I think that's going to be enough. Yeah. We'll see where we wind up landing on that. So we'll save that, and then we'll go to main, and we'll do load scene. And we had something in here to get these X forms, right? So first off, I see a couple more references in here to track, right? So let's rename this track scene. We're going to rename that to current zone scene, right? Failed to create zone scene. And again, once we have a zone handler set up to handle a lot of this stuff for us, we're not going to have to worry about this. Zone, oops. Okay. And then we need, let's see. We need a way to actually get the player, right? So we need the X form for the player, and then we need the X form for the player mesh, because we're going to control those things differently, just like we did for the vehicle. So we can go here, and then we can do a, I think I can actually do, didn't I have these two things? I think they were just handles. Yeah, okay. Let me put this back. So let's put a K handle, and we're going to do player X form, and we'll do K handle, and we'll do player mesh X form, right? And then Let's go here. And we're going to do, instead of track scene, it's going to be current zone scene. And then instead of test vehicle, obviously, it's going to be player. And player mesh. And then obviously we want to set this one to player X form, and then this one to player mesh X form. And then we'll just say player mesh. Okay. And then one more thing, we'll do zone scene. Okay. Couple more references to zone or track here. So we'll do that. All right. So the next thing is actually going to be movement. And I am actually thinking now. That we are going to take. Why did it rename? Oh no, did I do the wrong? I don't know why it renamed it here. It's kind of strange. I want all of this logic, I think, back. Let me split this. Okay, I do have this outer loop, or the outer bit. It's just this section here. So we want this bit. And that needs to go right here. Oops. So we're just going to put hack player movement. And this is going to be, so we want to check our player X form for this. We can go ahead and close this. We don't need that anymore. We'll change the names of this up in just a second. So we want, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to move the we're going to move this outer node, right? This outer transform. This is going to be the sort of where the player is in the world. And then the mesh individually we can modify on top of that, right? So if we wanted to have you know, some sort of different transform for the actual mesh within this guy, we can control the mesh separately from the outer sort of player mesh. That's the idea there. Oops. So this needs to be player X form. And I'm actually just going to manually change all of these really quickly. And I think all of our other errors are here. Okay, so constrained to track. We are not going to do that. All we are going to do right now is we are going to say, instead of constrained to track, which we don't have anymore, we're going to do vec3 add. And we're going to do vehicle position, and we're going to add velocity to it. Oops. And none of that other stuff is needed, right? Surface normal we don't need. Let's see. X form position set. We actually we can do this all in one. We can actually do this all in one step. Let's do that. Maybe I'll keep it separate. So we want player X form, right? And then instead of all of this, it's just going to be that, right? And then we can get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of these two. Wait. Rotation set. Rotation from normal. Right. Okay, we don't want that. So this is going to be the player mesh X form on that one. So essentially, what we're doing, and I actually don't know why we're doing. Oops. Oh, I think this is to, yeah. Okay. So essentially, these are all the same steps. So what we're doing is we are essentially coming in here and we're saying, okay, here's the current vehicle. We have it called vehicle. We should probably rename that. So what is that? Player X form, right? So we get the actual transform of the player as a mat4. We get the position, so that's going to be player position, right? We get the forward vector and the right vector for that. We also get the delta time for the engine. We're going to say, let's call this movement speed, right? And 20 is like way too much. Let's keep that at like 2. And then turn speed is just going to be, I think we'll just call it turn speed. Good enough. So essentially what we do is if we are in game world mode, in other words, we're playing the game, then we move the player, which isn't constrained right now. And so the W key makes them go forward, the S key makes them go backwards, the A key makes them turn to the left, the D key makes them turn to the right, Q and E are strafe. So I'm actually going to delete this dead code here because we don't need that. And so we accomplish all these things by accumulating a velocity that'll be applied later. And then we also have a rotation that is applied as well for A and D. We then, this says constrained to track. It's not doing that anymore. All we do here, actually, do we need to do this again? I don't think we do. We already have, because we haven't done anything to it, we don't actually need to do that yet. Or this, right? So apply velocity, right? And this is not going to be like even linear velocity. Like it's either they're going to be moving or they're not, right? It's not going to be like a vehicle that speeds up and slows down. So we apply velocity to the position, then we set that position on the X form, then we recalculate the local matrices for the mesh and the outer player, and then we re-get the player X form, which is sort of the model matrix that's used for that, and it later gets passed on to use as the actual position for the cube that we draw in the world, right? That represents the player now. We also have the follow camera here. So this is going to work quite a bit differently than how we had it working in the past. So I think the way that we're going to handle this for right now is we were initially, like for a vehicle, we had a chase camera, right? So it was like behind the vehicle and then upwards. And that's no longer what we want to do. All we want to do is we want the camera to stay essentially at a fixed rotation for now. We'll eventually have the ability to orbit around, but for now, let's just have a fixed orientation. And so what we were doing is we were using the forward vector to apply the sort of chase distance. I am going to do, instead of the forward vector, let's see, I guess we're going to want this on the We're going to want this on the z-axis or the x-axis. I might have this wrong. Let's do vec3 forward, which is not the same thing as getting the forward matrix from the player X form, right? So we have that. We're gonna do, I can't remember if we have to do negative chase distance or not. We might have to play around with this a little bit, right? Thank you for the follow, appreciate that. Let's see. Three-legged chair, it's going pretty well. Yeah, can't complain. Just figuring out some basic systems here, right? Let's see. The upward offset is essentially just going to be, I think we need to like be way further out, right? This probably needs to be like, I don't know, like 30, right? And the chase distance probably needs to be, again, probably 30. And we can actually, we'll adjust this a little bit to see if we can't find a better number, right? But for now, that will work. All right, so we have, here's where we create the Euler rotation for that, right? So we basically just get a vector to the object, and then we point the camera at it and we set the radians, right? So I think that might be what we need. Let's go ahead and build, assuming I've got all the code right. And run and load. Okay, well at least it looks like I might have gotten that right. So we can move around, right? And the camera is staying relatively fixed, right? That movement speed's way too slow. So let's see, do I have, I know before we kind of started, let me see what the default position is actually. What is default forward? This way, yeah, okay. So I was correct in choosing the forward vector, right? So the default location is, or the default direction is this way, right? So if I push on W, you know, we can see that we move forward. Let me maximize this a little bit just to see. I wonder if that's too zoomed out. I don't feel like it is. I think that'll be okay. We definitely do need to. We do need to speed it up, right? So let's go with like 5 for the movement speed, and then let me actually also let me see something because I'm not 100% convinced that it looks like that is sunk into the water a little bit, which is not what I want. And I have a feeling I have this thing like way too tall for like how wide it is. So let's look at zone 0, 0. Let's move this up 1 unit. I really don't need these open either. All right, I guess we'll just leave that. And I can't tell, let's look at the sort of editor view here. It is slightly under the water, right? So I don't think that's worked quite the way that I thought it was going to. Did I get that wrong somehow? Okay, so we have X, Y, Z for position. This is rotation. And then this is scale. So I'm kind of thinking that... my measurement here is probably wrong. Let's try half a unit for width, right? And then... I wonder why that is not quite as high as I think it should be. Let me try 2. I don't remember where the origin of that cube is, if it's in the center or not. It's gotta... okay. So if I have it set to 2, and its height is also 2, does that mean the origin is at the top? That seems kind of dumb. It doesn't seem right. Is maybe my scale messed up or something? I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it for right now. Because we're not going to be scaling things weird like that anyways. Once we actually have a proper mesh, then we'll handle that. Tokyo Spliff, good to see you, man. How have you been? Welcome. For those of you guys who don't know who Tokyo Spliff is, he's on the YouTube side. I don't know how to do a shout out on here, but he's making a kick-ass looking game in OpenGL. He's making a first-person shooter that's based around the holidays, and it looks freaking awesome. He's done some awesome stuff on there. He's a Giga Chad, so definitely check him out. So the water is just done. It's just a plane, so it's got a refraction pass and a reflection pass. And I'm just rendering the scene essentially 3 times, right? So I just do 1 for reflection, 1 for refraction, then a 3rd time with everything else in blended. And that's all it is, right? It's actually pretty basic as far as water goes. Not a whole lot to it. You know, it's just, I don't have anything under it, so I can't really show that off at the moment. In this scene, maybe the tree will kind of show it a little bit better. You know, it's there, it works. Actually, if I run my testbed project, that does actually have a little bit better of a example in it. So this is kind of what it looks like with reflection and refraction. So it's not perfect. It's still got some issues. It's still got some things I'm working on, but it does the thing. There will be a Vulkan renderer too, I swear. Yeah, I know. I probably would have been done with this a whole heck of a lot sooner if I didn't actually do Vulkan to begin with. But I was like, well, you know, nobody else has really done that, you know, with a whole game engine from scratch. So, you know, I really appreciate that, though. That means a lot. Thank you. It's really cool to see you on here. I appreciate you stopping by. Really nice arch, by the way. Do you mean the arch that I'm running on in terms of Linux, or do you mean the Sponza? Yeah, people over here on the Twitch side are calling you a legend, by the way, which is true. Is the fade depth buffer based? Yes, it is. Yeah, so we use the depth buffer in order to fade the water. Yep. It would be a little bit more obvious if I had terrain working right now, but I don't, unfortunately. Yeah, it's the distro, yeah. Yeah, I prefer Arch. And I'm actually running Wayland at the moment. KDE Plasma on Wayland. Let's see. Screen space reflections? No, definitely not. I'm not a huge fan of screen space reflections, actually, because of all the artifacts that you get with it. It's fine for things off in the distance or things that you can't see up close, but like the problem with screen space reflections is like you get those artifacts when you're like if you're holding a gun and you're standing in front of a body of water, you'll see like the outline of the gun reflecting in the water, and it's really dumb. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of it at all. Now, if you're using it as something like a that's got kind of a dull reflection on it, like tile or something like that, where you can kind of see the scene but not really all that well in the reflection, then sure, it works fine. It's an okay hack for that, but otherwise, no. What's the benefit to Wayland to X? So X is X has a lot of issues, right? Because it's ancient for one thing. My particular setup here, I have different DPI monitors. So the screen that you're looking at right here is actually a 4K monitor, but I have 1080p ones off to the side. And X does not play nicely with that. Also, Wayland is a lot better, especially recently, with GPU acceleration. So it's pretty fast. And from what I understand, the API is a lot nicer to work with, although I haven't done that directly yet. Thank you for the follow, RMK. I appreciate that. Welcome. All right. So we have player movement, right? Which, it doesn't look like a whole heck of a lot, obviously, because we just started the thing tonight. But at least we have the ability to move a player around, right? And so I guess kind of the next thing that we could start thinking about, was 5.0 a good movement speed, by the way? I don't know if I actually tested that. I don't think I did. Let me check that first before I forget. It's a little better, right? It's more of a walk speed than anything else. We do need to actually update our logic so that when we enter this sound, it's based off the player's position instead of the camera position like it is now. So let's actually do that. Here we go. So I'm going to undo this, get rid of this, and we want player X form, right? And so in the world mode, the sound follows the player, or the plater, apparently. So we have that. Let me see if I can't pipe the sound over so that you guys can hear it real quick. Let's see. I wonder which... I should probably actually launch the game first before I can do this so I can actually tell if it's going over there to you guys. So let's load this. Let's go over here to... I should probably move this sound emitter a little bit closer, right? Let's see. That doesn't seem to be the right one. Is it going to be... Nope, that's not that one. The problem is each one of my monitors also shows up, but I have it on a splitter, so it's kind of... Nope, it's not that one. Not that one. I have a feeling it might be... I wonder if my cam link just isn't picking it up. There it is. Okay. All right, so why is that not? So we do see... Does this actually enter it or not? It does not look like it does. So why is that? Let's see. So we have player X form, sound position. So what we should be doing here is we should be getting the forward vector and the position, and also the up vector, and then piping those off to the sound system as the listener position. But for some reason, that doesn't seem to be doing the thing. So let me actually do, if all else fails, right? Right, we'll just do a printf. Point 2f. Point 2f and point 2f. So we have sound position X, sound position Y, sound position Z. Never understood why screen space reflections became the norm when, like, cube maps are just as good. They aren't really dynamic, but I've always found cube maps better. Yeah, I think they're way more accurate too. Screen space reflections have too many noticeable issues in comparison. I found pretty much every Source engine game looks a lot better with reflections than anything more modern. Yeah, I agree. In general, I agree with that. Like, I feel like graphics from 10 years ago looks better than graphics from today in a lot of cases. Not all cases, but a lot. All right, so we are updating the position correctly. There it is. Oh, now it's only coming through my speakers again. Why is that? Oh, probably because I have to do that. There we go. All right. So this is like a fire sound that I have playing in here, right? So it's based off of the player position now, which is pretty cool, right? So we have that working. So I can get rid of this tracing. I guess maybe it was working and I just couldn't hear it before. So perfect. So that's set up. So now we can actually start thinking about maybe even some combat type of stuff, right? Because I guess we could theoretically start setting up some of our systems and we don't even really need models yet, right? We could actually just do this with all like cubes and stuff. So I'm thinking we could set up, we have basic movement already. We could either tackle interaction with things, or we could tackle combat. There's a bunch of different ways we could go. It's all systems we're going to have to build anyway. We should probably also tackle... We should probably tackle spawn points, actually. Which is something we haven't talked about yet. So, if we take a look at our world map, we'll just make it a little bit clearer to understand this, right? So let's use these two zones as an example, right? So let's say we're going from Zorath Scar to Thornmire. When we essentially hit a certain point on this bridge, we're going to trigger a load of the next scene, right? And so what we could do is we could set up a volume that says when we enter this volume, unload the current scene, load another scene. But where do we spawn when we load up in that new scene, right? So if we're entering from Zorath Scar to Thornmire, we'd probably want to spawn somewhere either on or next to this bridge, right? Ideally, what you'd want to do is you'd want to have the trigger point to go back to the Zorath Scar somewhere behind you, and you'd probably want to spawn like here, looking forward into the zone, right? And the same thing would go for over here in Zoroaster. You'd probably have your spawn point would be here. But each of these zones is going to wind up having its, a few different spawn points depending on what you're doing. So if we are, for example, going from Thornmire to Osher's Reach, that's going to be a separate set of spawn points and trigger points than what would be present if, we were going here, or maybe even over here, right? And so our system that's going to be tracking our zones is also going to have to know, okay, what zone are we coming from and what zone are we going to? And then when we make that transition, what spawn point do we go to? And so the way that I'm thinking about this is like actually our spawn points don't even need to be like a specific type of node within the map, right? We could literally just add it in there as a node, right? So we have this environment thing up here, right? This environment node up here that's got our skybox and our directional light. So all we have to do, we could actually just literally use the systems we already have and build our spawn points this way. So we could just create a new node. We'll call it name equals spawn points, right? And every zone, we'll just say every zone has to have a node called spawn points. And if it doesn't, we're going to bleat about it, right? And then we don't even have any attachments, right? There's no attachments for this whatsoever, unless we wanted to, maybe render some debug geometry or something. But what we would have is we'd have children, right? And each one of these would specify a different spawn point. So we could put in a couple, and maybe, actually maybe we should have something to sort of signify where these are so that we can actually visually see them. I think for now I might just use the test cube again. So for this one, let's just do a, let's name these, right? So we'll do like spawn 0, 0, right? I can't see us ever needing more than 99 spawn points. Yeah, I can't. I don't even see us needing 10, to be completely honest. But we'll do that just to allow for it, right? So we'll take this, and then we'll do, I'm just going to copy an X-form because I don't want to retype all this stuff. But we're going to make the first spawn point. Let's actually make this spawn point over by the tree, just so it's a little bit easier to visualize, right? So I'm actually going to take this X-form. We're going to use this X-form. And we're going to say the spawn point 0, 0 is over by the tree. And that's all we're going to do, right? So all we have to do is create a node that has, that's within spawn points. And we'll go through any children of that particular node, and we'll get the names of them. And that is what we'll use to transition from one zone to another. So we can say another one here. And then this one would be spawn 01. And then maybe this one we put where the fire is, for example. So let's take this one, right? So we can do, we'll just put this X form here, right? And so if we spawn at 0, 0, we'll spawn here. If we spawn at 0, 1, we'll go here. And then when we load, or when we transition to a zone, we will also specify the index of the spawn point that we want to use. And I guess the name here is really just for consistency and debugging purposes. It's not really something that we have to have in place. It's something that we just have here for reference, right? So we know this is index 0, we know this is index 1. And when we get the collection of spawn points, this could be named A, B, and C for all we care. The names of these don't really matter. The only name that matters is this one. What matters here is the X form, right? So whenever we spawn into a zone and we don't specify a spawn point, which is something we probably shouldn't ever do, but if we don't specify a spawn point, then we'll just default to 0. And then that's where we'll spawn. And so let's see, our player has their own spawn point here, right? And I guess we should probably actually put this, a little bit above the ground, right? So let's just do that real quick. Obviously, these will all have to be, felt out in terms of, you know, what the height of the terrain or whatever is at that particular point. Eventually, we'll be able to, you know, manipulate these with an editor gizmo. But for now, we'll just hard code it, right? And so what we can do over here is, you know what, I think let's go ahead and actually, let's start scaffolding out the zone system, right? Because I think if we put too much of that code in here, we're just going to have to move it later anyways, and it doesn't really make sense to add too much of that here. So let's add our first system. This is going to be our first game system, right? So it's going to go in our game library, not the app, but the lib. Let's close some of these other ones. So under source, we're going to do systems, right? And under systems, we're going to create zone system .h and C. Whoops, I renamed that. I meant to copy it. There we go. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about the API and how this is going to work. So obviously we want to use KAPI, which means we need our defines. So that's fine. So what are the things that we need to know about a zone when we go to manage it, right? First things first, let's do a zone system initialize, right? And that is because we'll have some sort of zone state. So we'll have a struct zone system state, right? That we'll create. And obviously the game is going to be responsible for setting this up, right? So I suppose we could actually type that here. Zone system state, right? Zone system state. And so whatever sort of state we have in this, we'll just put a dummy in there for now. We can just define there, right? So we'll have an initialize that can return true or false. And then we'll have a shutdown zone system shutdown struct zone system states. And actually we don't even need we don't actually need the struct tag because we have the type there. All right, so and actually we don't need to export this either because this is game code, right? So we actually don't need to export that on second thought. All right, so the things that we need to know is we're going to want an indicator of success or failure, right? So we're going to want to return a Boolean, and we're going to say zone system and I think there's going to be a few different things. Well, actually, do we even need to know? Do we need to know what zone we transition from? Or do we just tell the zone system, hey, load this zone and spawn from this particular spawn point? Maybe we do that. Keep it simple for now, right? So I guess we'll do... Let's see, how do we want to set this up in terms of life cycle, right? I guess we could do a load, right? So we could do a load zone system state, and then we can do a kname zone name, right? And then finally we can have a, since we're only going to have a certain amount of spawn points, let's just make it a U8, right? And we're going to say spawn point ID, right? And that's what it's going to be to load into a zone. So we've got that. And then we have, we still don't know whether we're going to have more than one active zone at a time, right? So whenever we load a zone, we're also going to have to unload a zone. So let's do void zone system unload current. Right, we're going to assume that there's a current zone. We may wind up having to refactor this later. But for right now, we're just going to assume there's a single current zone that we have loaded. Okay. So we have a load, we have an unload current. Obviously, if there's nothing currently loaded, there's nothing really to do. So all we have to do here is do zone system load, load this particular zone at this spawn point ID. Now, the advantage to having it set up this way, where it just takes a name and a spawn point ID, is we can actually register a console command to do this as well. So our debug console that drops down, we can actually register something that allows us to sort of type in there as well. So we could just do like a zone load and then name and then spawn point ID. And then I suppose what we could also do, if we wanted to, just to make things a little bit easier, is we could do a B8 zone system transition, right? And this is going to be zone system state, and then we'll do kname, zone name, U8 spawn point ID. Okay, and the way that what this one's essentially going to do is it's going to call both of these under the hood, right? Okay. The other things that we're going to need. Is we're going to need some way to either update the scene directly, or we're going to need to have this system sort of do it for us, which is probably the thing that we're going to wind up leaning towards. But before we do that, we should probably think a little bit about what we might want, how we want to represent a zone. Because, right, a scene is one aspect of the zone, right? But there's other metadata that we might want to have. And what I'm thinking is we have this scene, which is the physical representation of the zone, right? But we have other things that we might want to keep in memory, like the name of the zone. So like maybe if you want to display it on the screen, like when you transition to that zone, you want text to come up to say, hey, this is where you are now. That's where you would get that. Other stuff like that, other metadata like that. So I kind of want to have a separate sort of structure that also holds onto that kind of data for that. So we're going to do a type def struct, and we're just going to call this a zone. Nice and simple. And I'm going to do a string for this, right? Because more than likely, we are going to want to access the name as a string instead of having to do it as a kname all over the place. But we're going to have it be constant, and we're essentially going to extract that from the loaded scene once we actually do it, right? So the other thing is a scene, right? And this is going to be zone scene, right? And that's going to be the underlying scene that is there, right? And then here, instead of U32 dummy, we are going to have a zone, active zone, current zone, right? Now, the scene already has state, right? It's already initializing, loading, loaded, unloading, etc. It already has all that. So I'm not going to duplicate that with zones, right? If we need to know whether or not the scene is actually ready to be rendered or anything like that, we can simply just query the zone scene and get that information. However, we do have, well, I guess So I guess the question becomes, do we want a zone here or do we want to pointer to a zone? Because if we don't have a current zone, then this would basically just be a null pointer, or do we just have a zeroed out structure here? I guess we could do something like U32 index, right? Right, and that's going to be just, the zone index. And that's going to be, pointing to like zone 00, for example, here. So maybe if we say, if this, we'll say not ready if invalid ID. All right, we'll just use invalid ID for that. I think this is probably good enough for now. We could probably say, hey, zone system state, current zone scene, and update it that way. And then if we want to move that over here later, we can. So let's stand up all of this stuff. So we want to include zone system. And we'll have a, I guess what we can do is fill out this one right away. So we said zone system unload current, right? And then just pass state. And then return zone system load state zone name spawn point ID, right? So that one's nice and simple. Unload current. I guess we could probably actually take most of this logic straight out of the main file, right? So let's do load game unload scene, right? Which we're going to have to rename that eventually. And so we basically want to take all of this stuff here, anything that is current zone scene, and we're essentially going to want to remove this. In fact, let's actually do that now, right? And so what we want, actually, let me go back here. The game state, we are going to want to we're going to want to add something in here for that. So we're going to say zone system state. We're going to add that here, right? And then I guess we'll go to, should we do initialize or boot? I think initialize is probably good enough. Let's see. Guess we could do it after the render graph, after the debug console's loaded. Here's viewport stuff. Editor gizmo. Yeah, I feel like we should probably do it before all this stuff. All right, so let's do it right here. So let's hook in our zone system. All right, so we're going to say if not zone system initialize, right? And this is going to be the address of state zone state, right? So if that fails, k error failed to 2. I can't spell initialize tonight apparently. Failed to initialize zone system, right? And I guess we'll put here initialize game systems, because this is probably where a lot of those are going to be. We might wind up doing it in application boot, but I think application initialize is also early enough for now. So we're going to throw an error here and return false, because obviously the game's not going to work without that. Okay, so we have that. So I guess let's set up the initialization, right? Which frankly, it's just going to be, for now, if not state, return false, right? Otherwise, return true. Simple enough. Shut down. I guess we'll just do zone system unload current states, and then, you know, wrap that in a if state. And that's going to be about it for now. Eventually we'll have other stuff to add to that, but that's pretty much all there is, right? The load and unload is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So basically, we are going to take, I think, everything that is in here. Yeah. So we're going to take everything that's in here out and put it in zone system load. All right. Now, we obviously have a bunch of stuff in here that we need to fix. So let's get our includes sorted out first. Obviously, we've got some return falses, or returns that just need to be returned false. So let's get those. Okay. Any of these should obviously be return false. All right. So state is going to be current zone scene state, right? So we'll just kind of point that to that. And then I guess we could also do, we only do this if the state is uninitialized, right? So we should probably also, we should probably switch this up and how that works a little bit. But let's fix the errors here first, and then we'll come back to that. Okay, so this is going to be scene creates, so this needs to be current zone scene, current zone scene, couple more of these. All right, and then, so this is where we actually get the player. Oh, we don't actually want to do that with these ones. We want to do it with this one. But these actually need to stay over here for now. Where was that? Load scene. Okay. So we'll come back to those and figure those out. So essentially what we want to do is whenever we do a zone system load, we're going to create the resource request to go ahead and load that particular thing. I think these are actually hard-coded at the moment. Yes, they are. So let's actually space this out a bit so we can actually see what the heck is going on here. Okay, so kname create zone 00. Should we do zone name here? Or should we... We could either... Okay, I have a decision to make at this point. We could either make it ID based and generate this name, or we can just use the name. I feel like the name is a little bit friendlier for development. I guess let's just do that. Right, so let's just do... I suppose I could change it to ID later if I want to. Let's just use the zone name as the asset name, right? And then the package name is obviously always going to be from the game, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, the other thing is going to be, this is going to be zone name. So we've got that. And I think that's actually it for this. So the only other thing is, I want to talk about this. Which is basically going to be, we need to, like, if we load a zone, we should probably unload the current zone, right? Before I do that, though, let me catch up on chat, because it's been a minute since I checked on it. Dustin, my dudes, how's it going? Missed the last stream or two. How are you feeling about this project? Excellent. Really excited about it. Is there a command or a document I can read for the game you're currently making? Unfortunately not. The closest thing that we have is this document here, which is, it's private, right? And that's because I really don't want, this is not going to be like a full game design document, right? This is really just notes for what I want to create and kind of concepts, right? I'm not going to be creating like a full game document for this. I don't think it's necessary. I think we're just going to feel it out as we go. And so I don't have anything yet. Probably what I'm going to wind up doing, once we get a little bit further in, once I have a little bit of visual assets put in and stuff, and some actual visuals, I'm probably going to make a little bit of a website for it that has some of the information on it. But since we're so early on into this, I don't really have any of that yet. I don't have any marketing material or anything like that. I don't even have a logo for it. In fact, before today, I didn't even have a name for it. That's how early on we are. So, at some point, though, yes. Let's see. How big do you imagine the map being in, like, units? You could, for now, just simply have a portal-like thing that you click to change zones. So, I was thinking about a click, and that's probably what I might do, or like, or maybe I'll have something where like it'll be a context-sensitive thing where you go, if you go inside of a trigger, it'll say, you know, press F to transition to this zone or something. Yeah, I'm not really too worried about auto-loading yet. Are zones going to have state? Probably, yes. That persist across unloading. I don't think so, but that's part of the reason why, you know, this might wind up changing a little bit. I'm just kind of feeling it out. There probably is going to be... Well, I don't know if it's going to be state that's stored in the zone or as part of the zone. So let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say you complete a quest that maybe blew up a building or something, right? That building is going to be currently destroyed in the world now. That's not so much going to be a scene-specific thing as much as a game state-specific thing where you'll have a flag that's set or something. And then when we go to load that scene, we'll check right then at that point to say, hey, which of these two things do we use? And use that. Yeah, and chests that are one-time open only would be included in that. Am I in the zone? Yes, I am in the zone. First-time chatter, welcome, by the way. No problem, just curious to learn more what your idea is. So I can go over it real quick, because we're about to actually end anyways. So, and I'm not going to get this system done, I think, before the end of the stream. So I can go over it really quickly, just so that you guys have something to kind of get an idea of. So the game is called Shadows of Illumina. It is based around this world, which we've already done a lot of mapping on. So this is not a complete map yet. We've only just begun to actually build this out. We have a little bit of lore behind it. And all of that lore is detailed in this document. And when I say a little bit of lore, it's actually, I mean, it's a decent amount of backstory so far, right? This is all lore right there up until this point. So we've already have like nine pages of lore, and we've only just begun, right? But basically, it's a world that has humans, dwarves, and trolls, right? So there's also a underlying thing called anima, which is essentially the magic of the world. It's directly intertwined with light energy and the life force energy of the particular world. Light energy has a lot to do with this world, hence the name Illumina, which is the name of the world, right? And so the overarching bit of lore that we have so far is it all starts up in here, which is called Dravenholm. So we have these three continents, right? So we have Dravenholm, we have Thaldor, and we have Valora. And so in Dravenholm, there used to be a city called Dawnvale, and it was basically the bastion of human power. And it was their capital city. It was a very bustling city, and very, very successful. Great economy, peaceful living, stuff like that, except within the government. So the government was actually fractured between two religious factions that were opposed. They were butting heads. And it actually went to the point of causing a civil war. That civil war ultimately led to the destruction of the city and the surrounding areas because of fighting using magic. And so ultimately, this whole area of this continent wound up getting corrupted by foul magic, right? And a good portion of the population in here, a decent portion of the population died. Tens of thousands of people died. And a bunch escaped, right? Essentially, this land is just basically cursed with dark magic at this point. And that dark magic is typically something that would spread, right? But it's kind of contained within this mountain range, this ring mountain range along the outer side of the continent. And the only way basically that it can make it out of there is through this little path over here to Umberthar. So Umberthar was not directly affected by it, but Umberthar is basically the last foothold of human power on this continent. And these guys are here basically trying to not only keep all of the evil that is in Duskvale from spreading, but also to try and push it back in hopes of eventually regaining their home. So, Dawnvale became Duskvale. That's kind of the whole thing there. And then essentially a bunch of the humans, as they were escaping to Umberthar and later, trying to leave the continent as a whole, they got word that a lot of this was caused by the trolls, via a rumor that was spread. And so they basically set sail from Umberthar over to Briskfjord, which is another sort of sect of humans. They're kind of keep to themselves. They're a little bit like Vikings essentially. But basically, the humans from over here set sail over here. These guys let them in because of what was going on. And then they marched south to what is now Zildane. Zildane was a troll city initially. And essentially, the humans said, you know what, trolls, you caused this. We're going to raise your city and build our own on top of it. And that's exactly what they did. The only thing was that the trolls never saw it coming, because they're not the ones. They had nothing to do with this, at all. It was purely the humans that did it to themselves. And the notion that the trolls were involved was spread by one guy who was within the troll government, who was trying to use that to get the humans to attack the government to overthrow their power so that he could take the reins. Well, his plan failed, but ultimately caused a war between these two guys. So the humans came in, took the city, not understanding, fully what had happened, although they thought they understood. And the trolls were like, what the heck? Why'd you do this? And so these two are at war essentially now. And that's basically where that sort of story arc begins. That's where you kind of begin the story. And then from there, you'll kind of progress into these other regions and meet the dwarves. And there's a whole, we've actually got a decently rich history behind them as well. And some of the other areas here. And so there's different factions, there's different religious factions, some of them warring against each other, some of them are neutral. Same with the various capital cities and nations and stuff like that. And all of them have their different things that they're going on, and that they believe. And essentially, there's also a whole bunch of different manifestations of the anima. And so there's 3 religious factions that all believe that anima is separate, something different. They all call it something different, and they all manifest it in different ways. And And then there's also two non-religious factions that have yet different definitions of Aether, or not Aether, Anima. And, they have their own belief systems behind how that works. And what none of them realize is that Anima is actually the underlying force that is that basically provides all of those sort of versions of it with their powers. And so the idea is that you as the player discover that underlying anima, which is a much more powerful and potent version than all of the other ones combined. And you use that to progress through the story. And that's essentially where we are. Hope that helps. LaFoley, have a good one. See ya. Why did you decide to split the world in load zones instead of streaming dynamically with the world? Okay, so namely because streaming dynamically has a lot of design considerations that you have to make that I really don't necessarily want to handle, essentially. And it's much simpler to just split them up, right? We may change that if we get down the road and we say, you know what, we've actually, it's kind of dumb to split it up into so many small different zones. Maybe we'll do it by continent. I don't think it's going to go that way, though. I'm pretty sure we're going to need that split by the time we're done building the world. Magic Chernobyl, kinda. Who made the map? Me. Magic Radiation Zone, yeah. Drazul sounds familiar. Was there a name like that in Aragon? Or was it Durza? Oh, yeah, okay. I was going to say, I don't think so. We have a little bit of lore, yeah. Guy, you wrote a full token lore. Yeah, I mean, it's not even in depth yet either. Also look at Diablo 4. Streaming causes a lot of issues, and that was 1,000 people working together. Yeah, exactly. So streaming, I'm like, I don't think so. I think I'm just gonna axe that from the beginning. Yeah, I'm gonna split it up, I think. Yeah, for sure. Lore sounds good so far. Awesome. I'm glad you appreciate it. At some point, I will summarize it. Once we have some visuals that I can actually build a website, I'll summarize some of that stuff. Altfish, hello, how's it going? Khalif, good to see you as well. Really like your series on game engine development. Keep it up. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. Gabriel, how's it going? Can you explain how you design structs, for example, whether a variable or attribute of any type should be a pointer or not? It varies. So it highly depends on the actual data itself. There's not really a one-size-fits-all answer to that. And sometimes I change it. I know that's not really probably the answer you're looking for, but that is what it is. Let's see. Largely unrelated question, but when do you think the point is that people learning graphics development should start getting into Vulkan and DirectX 12, given that OpenGL is deprecated and DirectX 11 is somewhere? Just given that OpenGL, WebGL is still pretty much the start of API. I would say once you're able to write a 3D renderer, I mean, I guess it doesn't even have to be 3D, but ideally 3D. If you've written a renderer in OpenGL that has, lighting and culling and reflections and all the, basic effects that you would expect from a renderer. If you've done all that in GL, I think it's probably time to move to Vulkan at that point. If that makes sense. Once you have the basics down, I would jump over to Vulkan or DirectX 12 or Metal, what have you. Recently finished the Stormlight archive books. That was very good. Okay, awesome. Yeah, Vulkan is the future. Yep. Or APIs like Vulkan. So DirectX 12, all that. All right. So that's going to about do it for our time tonight. So I probably am going to wind up finishing the zone loading offline. But basically the way it's going to work is it's basically going to manage the scenes for us and handle the transition between them. sans a loading screen, right? Because that's going to be up to the UI when we do that. But that's for another time. So I'll get a little bit of work done on that probably before the next stream, and then we'll go over what I did at that point. Okay. Do you use the shader float 64 extension? I do not. No. Your map sort of looks like two penguins and one got decapitated. I mean, yeah, I can kind of see that. You're not wrong. I might wind up having to change it because of that. That's very funny. All right. Anyway, let's find somebody to raid. Yeah, the world of rectangular bounds, exactly. I actually want to expand this into more than just, what you see here. The shape of this is also going to wind up changing quite a bit, I think. But yeah, let's pick somebody to raid. Let's see. And before I kick off the raid, I just want to say thank you guys for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we are going to raid El's Dragoon because they are Giga Chads. They're a team of two guys making a game on the NES. So we're going to go ahead and toss a raid over to their direction before they raid me. And yeah. Thank you guys for being here. If you haven't followed already, I would really appreciate a follow, and I will see you guys next time.